who would it be? Maybe that's where you go to your Jack story.
Yeah.
How about that? Welcome to What's Your Story? I'm Charley Timmins. I'm your host, and I come here every week with a guest that's authentic, genuine, with insights and practical information that you can put to use in your personal or professional life immediately. And today is no different. Today, my guest is Dave Light. Dave is the president of Certainty Resources. And we're going to deal a lot with this word certainty, get clarity, to get certain about certainty. And what he does is he has a practice where they are involved in strategic assessment during the life cycle of a company and the impact that that can have for people and companies moving forward. So I want to welcome to you the show.
Thanks,
Thank you
Charley.
for coming
Thanks
in.
for having me on board.
So I always start out by asking my guest, what do you do? Pretty wide open question. Time's yours.
I say I make CEOs cry for a living.
Pardon me? What was that?
I make CEOs cry for a living.
Okay. That's worthy of some discussion.
What I mean by that is strategy is planning. That's all. And strategy is a fancy word for a plan. And the leadership, people who are responsible for the governance of a company are the ones who are responsible for setting the plan. But sometimes in what I call fog of war, I had been a CEO in my prior life. You don't know what wheels are coming off. You know something's going wrong. So I'm the guy that comes in and asks the questions that make them confront those issues. And sometimes those issues have to do with leadership or governance, and those can be extremely uncomfortable. And I've had situations where people break into tears because you're striking on something that's so close to home that they're either fearful of dealing with it, and by the way, I've been in that position myself, or they don't want to deal with it. And I'm kind of, somebody asked me the other day, I was traveling, and they said, what do you do? I said, in a sense, I'm a mechanic. Like a mechanic, what's that? What's that about? And I said, I'm a business mechanic, I really plug in and look for what's broken. Is the spark plug out? Is it low on oil? What's really the issue within the business from the standpoint of 4 key pillars that I look at, which are product, market, sales, and governance, those 4 issues. And I have a particular way of let's say, carving into where there may be vulnerabilities in those 4 areas. And we get down to specifics. And usually, it's just my philosophy. From a leadership standpoint, it's where you are right now, where you want to be, and what is the change that needs to take place in order to get you there. So the whole structure of the way of my conversation with leadership is to that point. Where are you now? Where do you want to be? How do you want that to be different? And what's the thing we need to do? So it's what lever do we need to pull? What change do we need to make? So it's more mechanical. That's why I call myself a mechanic. It's not so much the touchy-feely, I'm not a human resource guy. But I am a human heart guy, because leaders, and what is often misunderstood probably by people who haven't been in a senior leadership role, is it doesn't look like it, but you're sort of existentially on the line as the CEO. Lonely at the top is not an inappropriate statement about senior leadership in a company, if you take it seriously. If you don't, it's okay. You can, be cavalier about the way you lead the company. But for most great leaders, and Charley and I talked earlier today about, I was fortunate enough to have 4 or 5 meetings with John C. Bogle, who was the founder of Vanguard, a true leader, extraordinary leader. They're different types of people. They have a different philosophy on the way they approach the responsibility to the organization. And I've had the benefit of working with or having clients where I was able to be exposed to senior management at some unbelievable companies. And I found it to be a common denominator at all the great companies. And I did make a decision early in my career. I didn't want to deal with losers anymore. You know, I had dealt with some companies that I felt did our company more harm than good as a vendor. So if I can tell a brief story about this. Yeah.
Time's yours,
I
Dave.
took my family on a Disney cruise. There were 9 of us. Took a Disney cruise, got off that boat and said, I'm going to make Disney a customer of mine. I was just so overwhelmed by the way, how beautifully well everything was choreographed and done on Disney. And about 2.5 years later, Disney was a customer of mine. And you know, I joked with the guy that I dealt with who was a VP. I said, I've gained a lot more from Disney than Disney's gained from me, because my exposure to that quality of operation was just
so
fantastic.
they're in the customer experience. You had a positive experience, and
yeah, and I just thought, how do you get this? Like, how does this show up like this? It's magnificent. I mean, if anybody who goes to Disney World knows it, right? It's like, how does this happen, right? Well, it happens because of just extraordinary leadership. I
so
mean,
what's the formula? Did you sort of
I
derive
think
that?
it's different in every one, but here's my take. So I had Costco, Cisco, Walt Disney Company, Walmart, who a lot of people put down, but I thought they were an extraordinary company. And I really boiled it down to selfless, purposeful leadership. You really had companies that were able to jump the fence into separating the identity of the individual leader from the purpose of the organization. And those companies that were able to do that, I mean, another example I'd use is Costco. I was a global Costco vendor. And Jim Senegal, I only got a chance to meet once, but was around his stuff a lot, right? Was often vilified by Wall Street because he wasn't really earnings focused, a little bit like Bezos that way. He really was never focused on earnings and maximizing the bottom line. In an interview once, he said, basically, I built this company for the employees. I built this business for the people that work here. The membership second, and then Wall Street third, delivering to investors third. And I thought it was a brilliant insight. And my exposure to them was that his employees were very much of that culture. They got it. They got the fact that they were part of something important and unique. So I guess what I aspire to with each one of my clients is I want them there. I want them to get the miracle of conducting a business in a way that's selfless and purposeful.
So when you meet,
Which, yeah,
I'm sorry.
which is hard, by the way. Right.
So when you're introduced to a leader, when do you know that they're going to be a good client for you?
What makes a good client?
Yeah, what are you looking for?
Well, first of all, they have to be a capitalist. They got to believe in the free enterprise system. If you read, I wrote a book called The Art of Sales War, which was basically, I took the art of war and rewrote it for the selling environment.
Well, that guy's been long dead. He can't sue you. That's
he can't
good.
sue me. Yeah,
That's right.
Public,
He's long
public
dead.
domain, so I can get away with it. But that whole book, it's a strategy book. It's how to execute in a competitive marketplace, right? Which is the way I wrote it. And I mean, a great story is I interviewed who's the guy who's now a client, but not my typical. During the interview process, I asked him, well, who are your competitors? And he's like, well, we don't have competitors. We're unique. We provide a unique service and thing, which is a delusion that a lot of leaders exist under. We are somehow unique and we don't compete. Well, if my business is Certainty Resources, there's the Certainty Resource dollar out there somewhere that could be spent on me, right? But it could be spent in a myriad other ways besides on me, on Dave Light. So in effect, not only do I have direct competitors, people who do exactly what I do, strategic assessment, but I have a lot of people who are competing for that Certainty Resources dollar who have ancillary type services, and they may spend it on a new copier or new computers. We need a new website instead of hiring Dave. So the idea, that's why I say first and foremost, the leadership that I deal with have to be capitalists. They have to be free enterprise people. They have to understand the marketplaces are competitive. The objective of my assessment is to elevate the competitiveness of the business, period. again, human resources and stuff, that's somebody else's business. But in terms of strategy and the way to win in the market, they got to want to win. You have to want to win. If you don't want to win, you're going to keep bouncing up against a ceiling that's at, $100,000 or $1 million or $2.5 million, and you'll keep hitting that because you haven't really gotten over the basic notion that competing is what drives business. You have to have a willingness to compete and want to win. And I think every leader that I've ever encountered who was great, and I've been really blessed with having worked for only a couple of guys, but both of them were brilliant leaders, were incredibly competitive guys. So, I'd say that's probably the first criteria. One is, are you competitive
And a capitalist.
and willing to fight in the market and succeed, I think
You mentioned the
that's
word
way.
change before. What role does that play in their mindset when you meet them?
Change?
The word change.
And how did I use it?
You just mentioned it. I'm just picking up. I'm trying to make conversation
okay.
here.
Okay, so change per se is not important. Change of behavior is important.
Stop there because we have to go to commercial. I'm going to pick that up when we come back.
Jump for it.
Because I think there's going to be a lot to dig through there. So
Okay.
we're going to take a quick break. We're going to hear from our sponsors. When we come back, we're going to go right back to that question and Dave will enlighten us. So stay tuned. See you shortly.
Behind the scenes footage, previews, and more.
I work 13 hours a day, 6 days a week. So when I'm off the clock, I gotta get stuff done. So when I need a snack, I need something healthy, tasty, and easy to eat. Like wonderful pistachios without the shells. They're protein-powered, delicious, and great on the go. And that's perfect for me. Thanks, Liz. A woman without a lot of time.
Whether you're a gourmet cook or just want to eat like one, visit Rostelli Market Fresh, your home for the freshest, locally sourced ingredients to please everyone who loves great food. Our organic meats, quality seafood, and free-range poultry are cut fresh to order. Chefs create culinary-inspired prep foods made fresh every day, which pair nicely with our vast selection of fine wines and spirits. Choose from handmade pastas, artisan cheeses, organic produce, and grocery items, all from the finest purveyors. Rostelli Market Fresh, from our family to yours.
RVNTV is a platform for people of any industry to share their story. Over 285,000 viewers are tuning in to RVNTV shows monthly. We guarantee a great experience that you'll be sharing with everyone you know while increasing your personal and company's brand awareness. But what is your brand? According to Forbes, it's a combination of your logo, your product, your design and feel, and your personality. Did you know that aside from being a guest, we offer even more opportunity to boost your brand? Adding your company logo and website on screen during your interview will allow viewers to recognize your brand instantly.
We're live. We're back.
Okay.
I'm back here with my guest, Dave Light. And Dave works with organizations around this concept called strategic assessment, getting them from where they are to where they want to be. And I brought up that involves some kind of change. And that's where we left off in the last segment. So pick up there about the role that change plays in the work you do with these people.
So everybody knows it's bad to smoke. Okay, it didn't used to be that way, but it changed, where smoking became undesirable behavior. But it was really hard for people to change their behavior.
I agree with that.
And by human nature, that's the case with any kind of important transformation that we have to make, right? When a company is stuck, like I said, at a ceiling, a revenue ceiling, they can't get through it, there needs to be a behavioral change to make that happen. It's not just pulling a lever. Oh, if we just get a new website, it's going to fix it, kind of thing. There are no solutions like that, right? It's a change in the behavior of the people that are leading the company, and therefore, by the way, the followers follow the leaders. They emulate the leaders. I'm sure anybody who's been a follower, me, knows that you pay a lot of close attention to the person that's leading the organization. As the leader behaves and changes behavior, so will the organization, right? So that's going to happen. The tough thing is changing that behavior. It needs to be a heart attack reason, typically. It's got to be existential. They got to think, there has to be a moment when they think, if I don't make this change, if I don't change my behavior with respect to this, and I'll give you an example. You want a story about that?
And they always work.
Okay, so had a company, they were in the analytics business.
Analytics?
Yeah.
That's hot right now.
It is. Well, it's always been hot, but they've been in it for a while, and they're vets, and the assessment suggested that this fellow was what's called a messiah or a messianic type leader. Now, what that means is the type of leader that develops a dependency between his followers and himself. And typically the way it's propagated is that the leader will come in and save the day. It kind of rides in on a white horse. Oh, you were stuck. Oh, it wasn't working. I came in and I made it happen. Well, that's known to be an afflictive leadership style. Okay, it's been studied a lot. You can dig it up in the journals. It's a very afflictive style because what happens over time is the leader tends to take credit for the wins, but then tends to, give blame to the people that work for him for the losses and the failures. And it just, that wave keeps going, right? And it can get to a point where it just shatters the entire organization because everyone's demoted and demotivated. It's the exact opposite of the Bill Belichick. I'm not a sports fan, but I'm a sports coaching fan. It's sort of the opposite of the Bill Belichick coaching technique, where Bill is like, they win, I lose. Mm-hmm. If the team wins, it's because they won, because of the efforts they made. If we lose, it's something I failed to do, right? So the Messiah leader is sort of the 180-degree opposite of the Bill Belichick approach. For him, he knows that that's true. So this client I was working with knows it's true, but he can't stop himself. And was unwilling to commit the time and energy into what do I need to do to transform from this kind of a leader that's damaging my business and keeping a revenue cap on the business, that's the important thing, to a transformational leader or other type of leadership style that really empowers, delegates to, empowers authority to the people that work for me.
When you were talking to him, did you sense he had that ability within him to become that transformative leader?
I did at the time, yeah.
Great. Okay, what happened?
I did at the time. I'll tell you exactly what happened, and it's unfortunate. I got to be careful about what I say and how I say it. But the financial situation of the company made it, diverted the attention that should have gone into that governance problem to keeping the lights on.
So
and that often happens, right?
Sounds to me like you got there too late.
Probably, yeah.
It's not your fault, but I mean, it's
what it is.
You got called in.
It's what it is, and it's not an unusual phenomenon, especially when things are in decline, because they're grasping. Right. It's that grasping idea that you see in leadership sometimes when the business is gone. They're trying to grab. Oh, I can save it. I can save it somehow. Rather than recognizing that it may be their behavior that's actually manifesting that failure. Right? And what's the sad consequences of this is great people leave first. They're the ones that get it, and you end up with a lot of people who are just clinging, hanging on.
So what leaders have influenced you?
Or sycophants who tell you you're great. You're great, Charlie.
Would you say that again, please?
You're the genius.
Say it again.
You're the one that makes it happen.
Who are some of the leaders, either firsthand or indirectly, that have influenced this approach that you have in working with other leaders?
Definitely reading and being fortunate enough to meet a couple of occasions. John C. Bogle. John was
the Vanguard guy.
Yeah.
Founded Vanguard. Okay.
Yeah, and he it was just by total luck when I was head of the Magellan Leadership Group. I stalked him for like a year because we had an award that we were giving called the Intrepid Leader Award to guys that just demonstrated remarkable leadership, like Magellan, right? First guy to circumnavigate the globe, who, by the way, never made it, but the voyage did. It's an important, if you ever get a chance, read the story.
Now that's a hell of a leader, leading from the grave.
Leading from the grave, and he did. If you read the account, he actually had a reporter on board, and if you read the account, the reporter made it with all the manuscripts, and he tells the story of the absolute dedication that the crew felt for Magellan. So they started with 257 men. They got back to Spain with like 12.
Wow.
Everybody else was gone. All the ships were gone but one, but they made it all the way around.
That's a commitment to a mission.
That's commitment to the mission of the leader, right? Phenomenal, beyond the grave. And I like the fact that you said that. His leadership perpetuated beyond him through, by the way, not an easy voyage, right?
Mm-hmm.
They crossed most of the South Pacific without him,
Wow.
without the guy that took him there. So that
Around the
means
Cape-
that
around
his
the-
leadership was so compelling that it carried his people.
Who else?
So John C. Bogle, and a couple of tidbits there, you know, there's a great quote on John's blog when he was alive, when he had a blog, which is, "If the trumpet is uncertain, who will prepare for battle?" And it's really what triggered the idea of certainty resources in me. If the trumpet is uncertain, who will prepare for battle? I mean, if you think about that, it's out of the Old Testament, right, Kings. But it's a brilliant insight, right? If the leader doesn't have the mastery to be able to communicate the purpose and importance of what they're doing to the people so that they get it, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to, why should they rise to the occasion? Why should they rise and do the work? Which is, you know, I think about Jim Senegal, for example, at Costco. He was very much that kind of guy, you know, very much in the trenches with the troops. His mission was so indelibly imprinted on the organization. And again, I don't know it well. I was a vendor for some years, right? But I felt very fortunate that I had exposure to what really astounding leadership was all about. You know, really world-class leadership. I mean, others, a lot of from history. You know, I read Marcus Aurelius, his meditations, his writings and meditations are astounding. Astounding insight into one of the greatest Roman emperors of all time, who was very comfortable with writing down his thoughts in a manuscript. And it's just like you and me talking. And here's a guy that was, you know, you see Gladiator? That's Marcus Aurelius, right? He's an amazing leader and very benevolent to his people and so forth. Other leaders, Julius Caesar, Conquest of Gaul. I've read a lot of leadership books. Supreme Commander by Stephen Ambrose, which is about Dwight David Eisenhower. Phenomenal book. Undaunted Courage also by Stephen Ambrose. American Caesar by William Manchester, which is about Douglas MacArthur. You know, these are phenomenal biographies, not to mention two big ones, the 2 volumes on Winston Churchill, The Last Lion, which are astounding. You know, it shows how what the mentality is of these people that are purposefully driven. You know.
Eisenhower, Churchill, MacArthur all dealt with uncertainty.
Tremendous. Yeah, tremendous.
So what was the key to how they turned that around into a purpose that caused people to follow them?
I mean, it's different in different areas. The reason they were successful was different for different reasons. MacArthur was successful because he was a buoyantly optimistic, supremely confident leader. When you're Phil Jackson, who was the coach of the Lakers and also the coach of the Bulls before that, you know, they won 6 championships in 9 seasons. Before he came there, Michael Jordan was still there. They couldn't win a championship because Michael Jordan couldn't win a game with 50 points. And the whole strategy at that point was just feed Michael the game.
Correct.
But what Michael says is that he gave the team confidence. And Jackson's thesis is that confidence is the number one predictor of success in leadership. So short of everything else, whether it's virtuous or afflictive leadership is secondary. It's another issue. But confidence and the ability to convey confidence in another human being, which, by the way, is not easy. right? It's an art form. To him is the number one predictor of success. And
Yeah, I hear that trumpet. I hear
You
a
hear the
trumpet.
trumpet, right?
I hear the trumpet
You
in the
hear
background.
trumpet. Yeah. I mean, in his case, it was the triangle offense. You know? But
We're going to have to bring this to an end.
yeah,
But I have a question. What 3 words best describe you?
me? Certainty, certainty, certainty. That's
You heard it.
that's it.
That's all he's going to give us.
That's the only thing that's.
But are you certain?
I am. Absolutely.
This is the time of the show where you get to look into the camera, speak to the audience, share anything you'd like to share about you, your practice, meeting with them, whatever you'd like to do. Time's yours.
Don't be fearful of certainty. Crack the code. Figure out what it is. That's what I do for a living. If you want to reach out, don't text me. That's a bad idea. But you can email me at dave@certain.im. That's dave@certain.im. And I don't really have any conditions. I'll talk to anyone who can pay me. So
Phone calls are free, though, I would imagine.
phone calls are free. But if the plan is the problem, let's talk about it.
And you've written a couple books. Would you care to share the titles with them?
Sure. So I've written 4 books now. The one that's up on Amazon currently is The Outcome. That's a novel about my experience in the king crab industry. Used to do global sales in marine products, and we had a king crab operation. It's kind of a great mystery novel because it's a Daniel Day-Lewis is the way I visualize this type movie. But it's about a shipwreck we had in the Gulf of Alaska where 14 men were lost. So pretty important event. My new book is called The Certainty Principle, surprise. And that will be out for Christmas, so it's a great Christmas gift. The Proximity Paradox is another novel that takes off from The Outcome and goes to Southeast Asia. The Outcome occurs in Alaska and Europe. And then I wrote a small book called The Art of Sales War, which is basically, if you know the art of war, I remapped that entire book into sales strategy.
Again, I want to thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Every week I bring you a guest that's authentic, genuine, that has practical information, insights that you can put to good use. Today, you're more certain than you were at the beginning of the show. Thanks to Dave Light.
I hope so.
Again, thank you for tuning in. I'll be back here next week again with a guest who's authentic and genuine. In the meantime, be well. Thank you for tuning in.
Thanks, Charlie.